Welcome everyone to the Council meeting for the 24th of June 2021, which I now declare open. Although members of the public can't join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website. And I extend a warm welcome to all of you who are watching online. As per the current Chief Health Officer's Stay Safe directions, all councillors will keep their face masks on, only removing to speak for clear enunciation and visibility for this broadcast. In order for me to chair this meeting correctly, my mask will be off for the majority of the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. And councillors, I've received an apology for tonight's meeting from Councillor Sypek. Can I please have a motion that the apology from Councillor Sypek be noted? Moved Councillor Byrne, seconded Councillor Iser. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 4 is the confirmation of minutes. And councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 8th of June 2021 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Bettio. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 5 is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict of interest for item 10.2 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any other councillor? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a general conflict of interest on item 10.3, 33 Dean Street, Moonee Ponds, for reasons previously disclosed in writing to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor? Councillor Sharp.
Sorry, I'm sitting in the wrong spot. I have a conflict on agenda item 10.3, 33 Dean Street, Moonee Ponds, for reasons disclosed previously to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any other councillor? You'll also note that I have a conflict of interest in item 10.3, a general conflict of interest for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing. For that item, Councillor Hodgson, as Deputy Mayor, will chair report 10.3. Item 6 on the agenda is presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations this evening? Item 7 is petitions and joint letters. Do we have any petitions or joint letters this evening? Item 8 is public question time, and we have received 4 questions from members of the community for tonight's meeting. As we do not have residents in the public gallery, I propose we move to suspend the provisions in our governance rules requiring questioners to be present in the gallery. That will enable me to read the questions that have been submitted in advance and for the CEO to read the responses. Councillors, may I please have a mover that Council resolves to temporarily suspend the public question provisions in its governance rules to allow questions from the gallery to be read by the Mayor and responses read out by the CEO. Moved Councillor Byrne, seconded Councillor Hodgson. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. So the first of 4 questions this evening comes from Helen Warren, who asks Council, I'd like to know what the rationale is in denying Essendon Royals permission at their expense to use a curator, the same one Council uses, to maintain the grounds at Cross Keys, in particular as similar permission has been provided to Windy Hill Cricket. In my opinion, there appears to be a bias for cricket and football while soccer is discriminated against. I'll pass to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Helen. Through the Mayor, Council's seasonal allocation agreements have a particular provision for the maintenance of cricket wickets areas by clubs. The cricket wicket is a specialised surface and its maintenance requirement goes beyond and above Council's standard service levels. This is not the case for soccer fields and Australian rules football grounds. Windy Hill is leased directly by the Eastern Football Club under a Crown lease, and the club is required under that lease to maintain the sporting field. With respect to Cross Keys Reserve, Council has a proactive turf maintenance program in place which involves scheduled mowing, fertilizing, aeration, top dressing, and turf repair and replacement. This is delivered internally, not by a third-party contractor. Council is willing to work with the club on a maintenance partnership managed by Council. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The second question this evening also comes from Helen Warren, and it reads, What is the rationale is denying Essendon Royals full access to the club rooms? The proposed restricted access will have a negative impact on the Moonee Valley community, with the club rooms used for dinners, coffees, catch-ups for Royals members, siblings and families, many of which are Moonee Valley residents and ratepayers. I'll again pass to our CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, Helen. Through the Mayor, within MV 2040 and in our current council plan, there are strategic directions set to provide multi-purpose sporting facilities to the community and to increase the utilization of these community assets, especially those that have had significant capital improvement. Access has not been denied to Eastern Royals Soccer Club. Under the seasonal allocation agreement, the Eastern Royals Soccer Club have full access to Cross Keys multi-purpose pavilion during allocated hours. During these approved times, the Eastern Royals Soccer Club are permitted to use the premises for non-trading purposes, deliveries, cleaning, meetings, and social activities for the club. These conditions are applicable to all seasonally allocated sporting clubs. Under the agreement, if clubs require additional access outside of approved times, the club is required to submit a request in writing to Council to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The third question is from Shani Siratik. Shani's question reads, The motorised high-impact activity of recreational power boating is environmentally unsustainable and will cause pollution, including noise in the air and water, sediment disturbance, deprivation of existing passive aquatic sports / recreational users and endangerment, and ruining the ambience and aesthetics that the community currently enjoy and expect to continue, etc. This high-powered recreational activity, in brackets, and boat ramp initiative, close brackets, promoted by, quote, Target 1 million, close quote, is not in alignment with council goals and the IPO1 or Melbourne Water, EPA and Parks Victoria objectives currently. How does council intend to control the impact of, quote, Target 1 million, close quote, given that our overlays are not consistent or strong enough to protect against inappropriate development of land, but also usage of land and water in green-blue areas? I'll pass to our CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, Shani. Through the Mayor, Target 1 million is a state government commitment to grow participation and get more people fishing more often in more places. Council does not have jurisdiction for the management of on-water activities. The use of boats and fishing on Maribyrnong River are managed by a range of authorised state government agencies, including the Victorian Fisheries Authority, Victoria Police, Parks Victoria, and Melbourne Water. Whenever Council is advised of activities that may not be compliant with state laws, we alert the relevant agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The fourth and final question for this evening also comes from Shani Siratik, and it reads, How will Council ensure compliance with the Incorporate Plan Overlay, Schedule 1, in brackets IPO 1, that covers from the midline of the Maribyrnong River itself, riverbanks to the immediate environs, without a provision for non-motorised only movement to link publicly accessible areas and facilitate cross-valley movement? And how will such overlays be supported without mirroring overlays and regulations by other key stakeholders such as other councils, Maritime Safety, Parks Victoria and Melbourne Water, given only jet skis are not permitted and all other motorised recreational boats are, despite question 1's observations? I'll again pass to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Shani. Through the Mayor, the Incorporated Plan Overlay, Schedule 1, IPO 1, is one of a suite of overlays at Clause 43 in the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, designed to manage heritage and build form. Clause 43.03-1 requires, when assessing any planning application, Council is to consider, amongst other matters, the effect on the natural beauty and on the future use and enjoyment of the area by the community. The IPO is designed to manage buildings and works and allows us to consider amenity impacts when assessing a planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you to those who asked questions this evening. Item 9 on the agenda is reports from delegated committees, and there are none this evening. Item 10 is council reports. Item 10.1 is budget 2021/22. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
Mayor, I'd like to move to defer the report.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Can I get a seconder for that motion? There being no seconder, that motion lapses. Councillors, can I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion, please.
Yes, if you could present your alternative motion, please.
It's a long one. That Council resolves to A, adopt the annual budget 2021/22, provided as Appendix 10.1.1, subject to the following changes and additions totalling $968,500. Additional funds of $30,000 to commission a report on the financial and environmental effectiveness of actions Council could undertake to reduce carbon emissions. Additional funds of $48,500 to fund residential and business energy audits and advice. Additional funds of $50,000 to support outdoor dining programs in the future, including exploring a permanent program for assessing parklet applications. Additional $20,000 for enhancements to streetscape at Unley Grove Pocket Park. Additional funds of $60,000 to support community grants for partnerships with Council for student support or employment pathway/workplace preparedness for MV 2040 target groups. Additional funds of $50,000 to fund the purchase of library books. Additional funds of $250,000 to a new community climate emissions reduction reserve for funding actions to reduce community carbon emissions to mitigate risks of climate change. Additional funding of $10,000 to fund appropriate landscape protection in Mascoma Street, Strathmore. Additional funding of $250,000 to fund works at Montgomery Park, including resurfacing the tennis courts and improvements to other recreational infrastructure. Additional funds of $50,000 to support public park amenity, including drinking taps, toilets, seating and signage. Additional funds of $150,000 from the Open Space Reserve to fund the design of a regional playground in Rosehill Park. Reallocation of $500,000 Clifton Park Pavilion design funding and $500,000 Maribyrnong Park Pavilion design funding to a Pavilion Development Planning Reserve to support planning and designs for all or some of pavilions at Maribyrnong Park, Clifton Park, Aberfeldy Park, Boeing Reserve and AJ Davis Reserve. Reallocation of $900,000 funding for Strathnava Sports Field upgrade works to 1. Allocate up to $600,000 for resurfacing of the hockey pitch in Travancore, with any unspent funds to be allocated to the Sporting Grounds Infrastructure Reserve. 2. Allocate $300,000 to a Sporting Grounds Infrastructure Reserve to fund upgrades to turf and playing surfaces, lighting and other sports-related infrastructure. Include Mascoma Street, Ascot Vale into the Drainage Design Program for completion of design works in 2021/2022. B. Ensure that all decisions for the expenditure of funds in the following funds and reserves will be made by resolution of council: the Pavilion Development Planning Reserve, Sporting Grounds Infrastructure Reserve, Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve. C. Note that allocations of funding from the Pavilion Development Planning Reserve will consider officers' recommendations, community needs and council's planning and policy documents, including MV 2040 and the Community Facilities Action Plan, with officers to engage councillors in discussions immediately. D. Seek further grants, including from state and federal government bodies, to support the resurfacing of the Travancore hockey pitch and develop long-term planning for the regular renewal of the hockey pitches in partnership with stakeholders, including discussions about existing licence agreements. E. Investigate options for turf treatments and maintenance for sporting grounds to improve the quality of playing surfaces in both the long and short term, to be funded through the Sporting Grounds Infrastructure Reserve as appropriate. F. Write to the Department for Transport and local members of Parliament, Minister Danny Pearson and Minister Ben Carroll, advising of the community budget submissions relating to issues associated with state arterial roads and seeking investigation and consideration of these matters raised by the community. G. Write to the Department of Education and Training and local members of Parliament, Minister Danny Pearson and Minister Ben Carroll, advising of the community budget submissions relating to issues associated with state school education matters raised by the community. H. Adopt the revenue and rating plan provided as Appendix 10.1.2. I. Authorise the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of this decision. J. Respond to those who lodged a submission on the proposed budget 2021/22 in writing, advising of Council's decision and the reason for the decision in accordance with Council's community engagement policy. K. Grant a rebate in relation to rates and charges to all Moonee Valley residents eligible within the meaning of the State Concessions Act 1986. The maximum rebate is $20. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Iser. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just as a councillor group, we have all worked really hard on this budget, from scrutinising officer recommendations, consultation and communication with community groups, advocacy work and reviewing of budget submissions. This was reflected in the level of community engagement experience, with 51 responses received and 49 of those as formal submissions. I want to thank everyone who took the time to go through this process. The effort from our community to advocate for their diverse needs is really admirable, and I thank you all. On our council website, you can find a summary of the submissions along with the issues raised and officers' funding recommendations. This budget has been incredibly difficult following a tough 2020. In addition to the obvious financial impacts of COVID-19, the decrease of the rates cap from 2% to 1.5% for the 21-22 budget cycle has reduced revenue projections over the medium term by approximately $5 million. During this same period, operating expenses are projected to increase above the 1.5% rate cap, and a substantial annual capital works program is proposed. These factors have placed enormous pressure on council's cash reserves, and as a group, we have had to make some tough decisions to ensure sound financial management and long-term financial viability of council. Nevertheless, we are adopting a budget that delivers a vast range of services and projects to the community that includes operating expenditure of $185 million and capital expenditure of $47.9 million. The budget provides for an operating surplus of $13.2 million, and excluding capital grants and contributions, the underlying result, which is a measure of financial sustainability, is anticipated to be an operating surplus of $2.5 million, noting that an appropriate operating surplus is necessary for council to meet the funding requirements of capital works and debt repayment. This motion resolves to adopt the annual budget and revenue and rating plan for 21-22 for adoption and to declare the rates, levies and annual service charges for the 21-22 financial year. The revenue and rating plan is a new requirement under the Local Government Act 2020's Integrated Strategic Planning and Reporting Framework. It is now a requirement for all Victorian councils to develop a medium-term plan for how council will generate income to deliver on the council plan, programs and services and capital works commitments over a 4-year period. The budget has been prepared in accordance with financial management principles and council's community engagement policy. While trying to balance service provision and capital works delivery, the budget process has been rigorous and challenging while being fiscally responsible. Our community is growing at a rapid rate. Our council assets require ongoing maintenance that are costly, and our needs as residents is constantly changing and evolving. So it is extremely challenging as a council to weigh up the competing needs of our community and the priorities that are identified so that we can proactively protect existing assets as well as invest in and deliver new assets that enhance our public spaces, including our roads, footpaths, facilities, infrastructure, open spaces and sporting facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Iser, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Adams. There's some new thinking behind this budget by councillors that we hope will serve community well, with some better planning and some targeted funding streams. And one of the streams that we've put forward is a reserve for funding action on climate, reducing emissions reduction. And this is a really important step for Moonee Valley, and we're proposing a community climate emissions reduction reserve. It's a small step for Moonee Valley, but a big step for a climate safe future, and we're putting in $250,000 for funding action following a report that we've also put forward some funding towards. Thank you to the many submitters from the community who did express to us a clear concern about the extent to which we were budgeting for some climate action, and we hope that this small step is welcomed by you. We're also acknowledging that Moonee Valley spends a lot of our budget on sporting infrastructure, and it's testament to how important sporting facilities are to us as a community. But our planning of large spending on facilities has not always been undertaken through holistic frames and through holistic consideration of the facilities spending. We've identified that some work needs to be done on the scope of some projects to ensure that we can deliver what all clubs need in reasonable timeframes. Some projects might need to be scaled back to deliver things earlier and to include other projects. So, for example, all female sports players can have safe changing spaces. No club is trying to tape up leaking toilet roofs. We also want to make sure that facilities cater for wider community where appropriate, and that we have some strong environmentally sustainable design behind the projects. So we're taking an approach by creating a pavilion development planning reserve that enables us to get this planning right. I also just want to quickly mention some of the projects that are being funded in Moonee Ward. There's some funding, of course, going into the Flemington Hub, which will commence construction next year, and thank people very much for their patience while this is ongoing. There's some funding towards the streetscape in Moonee Ponds, funding towards a terrific project in Unley Grove, and thank you to the residents who have banded together to work on a pocket park. Funding towards the hockey pitch, which services the whole of the municipality and wider. It's an important asset. Funding towards the Flemington Library, Essendon Rowing, and the Ascot Vale Library as well. Thank you to all submitters. And I'm just, Mayor, if I may just take 30 seconds. Councillor Sypek's not here tonight, and I know that he was very thankful to the Airport West group for putting forward the submission for the Hanson Reserve Sport Field lighting, and we're pleased that design work will be undertaken in this budget, and do wish Councillor Sypek all the best in his recovery. It's been very, very challenging to get this budget together, and hopefully the community's happy with the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd also like to speak in support of the budget, but I guess sort of touch on my previous motion first to defer the budget. So as I understand it, the Australian Services Union representatives of our hardworking staff at Moonee Valley have some outstanding questions for our consideration as part of the budget process, and I've equal faith that our hardworking managers will get back to them as soon as possible because of that unsuccessful deferral motion. So to the budget, and I'm sure every councillor is probably going to speak on the budget, so I won't take up too much time, but I think some of the highlights for the Rosehill ward, which Councillor Byrne and Councillor Sypek are also part of, covering Airport West, Niddrie, East Keilor, Avondale Heights, and Eston West. So including phase 1 for the upgrade of the Niddrie end of Keilor Road and the streetscape there, I think is a fantastic and well overdue part of our budget. Traffic management in Airport West is a huge issue that is highlighted to us every day of the week. And continuing the Rosehill Park works, which is really critically important, especially through COVID, when more people are using our tracks and cycling and walking and exercising everywhere. As well, I think it is fantastic that we are taking a look at those lights in Airport West, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more work to be done on that in the coming weeks, months, and hopefully not too much longer than that. As well, I'd like to thank all the locals who have submitted, been part of the consultation process, the many people who have waited many years for some of these projects to come to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also this was a really large piece of work, and I want to thank my council colleagues, the officers who have done a lot of work, and the community members who took the time to read through the budget. It's quite a read, make submissions for our consideration. I think we've got a really great budget here. It builds a lot on the community engagement that's been done, respecting our MV 2040 guiding document, and it listens and responds to the community needs that we have in 2021 as well. It's been an extraordinary exercise in balance. We have a very ambitious vision for Moonee Valley and an ambitious capital works plan to match. We've had to balance the needs of community with expectation, financial pressures with the need in recovering from COVID to provide additional support, and we also have needed to find a balance between planning for things and taking action on things. So I hope we've done right by the community and found that balance. I wanted to make a quick note that while rates have increased this year, Council wants to ensure that any of our ratepayers who are experiencing financial hardship will be properly supported. So we continue to pay attention to our financial hardship policy and look for ways that we can make things easier for people who are doing it tough. If you are having trouble making your rates payments, please contact Council to understand what supports are available and make use of those. my councillor colleagues have spoken to a lot of the items in our budget as well, but there are a couple of the smaller items that I think are worth noting. A line to reinstate the full library book budget for our much-loved libraries. As Councillor Iser's mentioned, the Unley Grove Pocket Park, which is a really great example of a community-led initiative, and I hope we see more of them. An allocation to a grant stream to support community partnerships, to support those MV 2040 target groups, I think is a really valuable addition and an extension of our outdoor dining program. The climate emissions reduction reserve, I think, is an example of how we are trying to find that balance between planning and taking action. So we've got a really strong roadmap, and that we've actually got money set aside to be able to put that solid planning into action. I'll make a note on pavilions. A lot of our community facilities are reaching their use by date, and we need to make sure that we're future-proofing facilities so they can cope with growth in participation and are inclusive and accessible for all. We need to do this in consideration of our vision for Moonee Valley with multi-purpose facilities. The MV 2040 document and community facilities plan, which were underwent extensive consultation processes. So I look forward to seeing Maribyrnong Park design this year alongside those other pavilions that are named in the budget. I think my time's up.
Councillor Hodgson, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. So I suppose there's three ways that I'm going to look at that. One is the things that the community already know about that were in the draft budget, the things that have been added in, but then I'm also going to touch on how we're going to pay for these things. So first of all, and I'll be fairly Rose Hill Ward specific, as Councillor Tyson mentioned, we're really excited to finally get to the construction stage in Airport West for the Latham work that has been, by the time it goes out for community consultation, detailed design to actually get to the construction of these traffic management devices, traffic management help. It will be really exciting because there are lots of little prangs in Airport West, so to say. In Nidri, obviously helping out in phase 1 of the streetscape down Keeler Road is extremely exciting, and obviously we want a really walkable city, and the $455,000 going into the Rose Hill from Rose Hill Park to Steel Creek to make that walkable is really great. Something else that is extremely exciting is more funding to go into the Quinn Grove precinct plan. So basketballers, netballers, volleyballers, whoever else, soccer players, I think that it's going to be a really exciting sporting hub. There will obviously be a lot of work going into that with consultation to occur with the money that's going into the planning there. So they were in the draft budget that have now, well, assuming this vote gets approved. In addition to that, I'd like to make note of the $50,000 to go to public park amenities. I think, again, with COVID, being able to access simple things like water bubblers, seating, signage, it's incredibly important that people know where, along our walking tracks, these really little things that don't cost a lot of money necessarily get put into the budget. So it's great to see that in there. And really, really exciting is $150,000 from the Open Space Reserve to start the planning on a regional playground for Rose Hill Park. Rose Hill Park is our premier park in one of our premier parks in the municipality, and it has been very frustrating for people in Rose Hill Ward that when you have birthday parties or whatnot, you do have to go to the other beautiful parks in the municipality, such as the Pirate Ship Park, Woodlands Park, or other parks, and we don't really have a really great park, but this is going to be something really, really special, so watch this space. And obviously the $250,000 for the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve, which has been touched on previously, I think that that is extremely exciting and a step in the right direction. Thank you to everyone who submitted to that. I know it's $250,000 is a starting point. We can see where we go from there based on reports that come back. I do want to say, and I'll just have a very short extension of time, sorry Mayor, that obviously we have to pay for these things. And we've got $130 million coming in from the rates and $16 million coming in from the user fees. On probably something that I think people should be aware of is that there's $18 million in statutory fees and $8 million in statutory fees and fines, which is about $150,000 a week. So I know that a lot of the residents do complain about parking infringement notices. That is in our budget, and our staff obviously will be fining people in order to make up that. But there obviously is an appeals process with that too. But I think that it's really important to touch on that is what is being approved tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bettio.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, not much more to add. I think my colleagues have covered pretty much most of the amendments. I just want to share in congratulating my colleagues and also the officers in their very diligent and hard work on this budget. This was hours and hours of painstaking deliberation. Unfortunately, the pie is only so big and we can only cut it up in so many different ways, but I think what we've got is an outcome that is, I guess, the best possible outcome we could have gotten to, given the circumstances. A couple of notes in support of our small business and local traders. There is $180,000 allocated to support the streetscape along Moonee Ponds, and an additional $50,000 to support our outdoor dining program. This budget's coming in at a really important time during the recovery phase for our local businesses, and I'm glad that council is supporting local business as much as we can so that we can get on with the job. Other than that, nothing further to add, but commend the work of this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Adams, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mayor. I might just take this opportunity to highlight some of the key projects in Buckley Ward, which include the construction of the Cross Keys Playground, car park and recreation area, the Aberfeldy Athletics track lighting upgrade, construction of the Chris Lane Memorial Baseball Field, planting more trees, the BMX and mountain bike recreational facilities at Fanny Reserve and Montgomery Park, as well as a feasibility study at Aberfeldy Park, continuing the Better Moves Around Schools program, and resurfacing of tennis courts at Montgomery Park and improvements to other recreational infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Adams, Councillor Bettio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Iser, Councillor Tyson. Those against? Councillor Sharp. That motion is carried. Item 10.2, Councillor Adams, you've declared a conflict of interest, so I will ask you to leave the chamber. Report 10.2 is 325 Ascot Vale Road at Moonee Ponds, Lot 1 on TP 446906X and Lot 1 on TP 376479D. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with a couple of small amendments for 7.1 to read details of the waste vehicle and access arrangements, and an additional condition 12 to read the roof terrace is not to be used after 11 p.m. on any day.
Just clarification, Councillor Hodgson. You said 7.1, potentially 7I?
Yep.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. Yes. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Iser? Oh, sorry, I saw your hand first. Sorry, Councillor Bettio. Councillor Iser. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this application is within the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre. It's for construction of an 8-storey building to be used as serviced apartments, and it's to be built on a vacant lot that sits on Ascot Vale Road near the corner of Gladstone Street. The application is fairly compliant with the scheme. It was not actually required to be advertised, but is coming to council as a major development. The proposal, as I mentioned, is pretty compliant. The amendments made was to correct a typo in point 7, and just to be clear that the amenity impacts on the residential building to the north of any rooftop garden there wouldn't be any unreasonable noise coming from that. Obviously, as a service apartment, it is not a residential hotel in the sense that it has an entertainment aspect to it, so we wouldn't expect that rooftop garden to emit noise in any case. I suppose that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Iser, wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Hodgson, for moving that with those small amendments. Obviously, this particular development is quite close in proximity to an existing residential apartment building, and so councillors have looked very carefully to make sure the interaction of the balconies in both of those buildings don't create any unreasonable overlooking for residents. And I might just address that briefly, because I think that's probably the only real issue with this particular application that's caused us some potential concern. And I do just want to I guess assure people that we have looked into this and been advised that the principles of equitable development have been preserved through this particular proposal. While there might be some overlooking impacts, the overall result is not unreasonable, given, I guess, the site and the context and the balconies that are in existence between the two locations. So look, we are conscious, as Moonee Ponds Activity Centre does continue to increase development, high density development, that this is the sort of concern that might be raised, but we have given this some real scrutiny, and screening the windows wouldn't be an appropriate way to address this. The nature of the application as serviced apartments does also mitigate against that to some degree. We have put that extra condition in around the use of the rooftop area to protect amenity of residents in the nearby building, and made sure that some other of the service amenities are set out clearly in plans, like waste, for example, plans that have to be approved by council. I think that's all I need to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson, you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Before we get to 10.3, if we could get Councillor Adams back into the chamber. We now move to item 10.3, and Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sharp and myself have declared a conflict, so I'll invite the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hodgson, to the chair.
Thank you, Mayor Nation. As we still have a quorum, just checking around the room, we still have a quorum for this item, so we will continue with considering item 10.3, which is 33 Dean Street, Moonee Ponds, Moonee Valley Racecourse, use and development of a multi-storey building containing dwellings, offices, a food and drink premises, including buildings and works within an environmental significance overlay bracket Schedule 2. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Bettio?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to defer item 10.3, 33 Dean Street, Moonee Ponds, to the Council meeting on the 13th of July 2021.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Bettio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I have some concerns in relation to the built form of the development, namely the setback of the proposal along the extension to Kenner Street. As such, I'm seeking to defer making a decision on this proposal until the next council meeting, so that we can enable further discussions with the developer.
Thanks, Councillor Bettio. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not much more to add, Acting Mayor, except to say that, yep, discussions will continue and looking forward to that.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We will now invite the other councillors back to the chamber and the Mayor will resume the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Item 10.4 is 10 Tupple Place. Oh, it was open for a reason. That's all right. Just a little bit ajar. Item 10.4 on the agenda is 10 Tupple Place, Keilor East, Lot 863 on Plan of Subdivision 013189, MV 602, 2020, construction of 3 dwellings. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Byrne, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I will, Mayor. This application is what can be achieved when a consultation meeting for council goes well. So originally when I saw this application, 644 square metres in a triangular shape with 3 dwellings and usage from a side laneway, I was, and as were the other ward councillors, we really did query whether or not that side laneway could be used, because if it couldn't be used, I don't think we probably wouldn't be moving an approval now. However, after investigating that a lot, it definitely can be used. For people who aren't aware of this laneway, it is the laneway that leads into the East Keilor Community Garden. But it can, and therefore the 3 dwellings do fit on the block. So once we were able to speak to the residents and the objectors about that, we then started working through really small things that might make this application better for the surrounding residents and the community garden. So a few things that were achieved that are listed in the conditions is that the gate to the community garden be relocated to the northern boundary of the laneway and is designed to swing open to adjoin the proposed western boundary fence at 10 Tupple Place and to maintain the laneway width of just over 3 metres. That way cars can still get through and there's no posts sticking in the way. And the installation of the gate is undertaken by the permit holder. The other thing is that the western boundary fence at 12 Tupple Place from the front title boundary up to the location of the existing gate be replaced with a fence, and that was something that was obviously quite nice from the applicant to be able to do that, considering it's not actually on the property. There's also provision for sensor lights on the pillar of dwelling 1 in the area of the deck to face the laneway, to help alleviate some of the security concerns. Some of the other things that were discussed, which I think is really nice and obviously wouldn't normally necessarily come up in these, is that the community garden had really strong suggestions on what plants to plant within the landscaping plans. So the proposed sugar thyme crabapple trees located within the secluded private open space of dwelling 1 and 2 be replaced with ornamental pear pinnacle species. And the proposed native frangipani trees be replaced with a tree species that is fast growing and has a large canopy. And I just think that that is really nice that these things were able to be really constructively worked through, whilst we don't necessarily like heaps of development in this area because of that extra face where they could get the extra driveway on. It is really compliant with Res Code. So thank you to everyone who worked through this, and hopefully these conditions do alleviate some of the issues, basically all of the issues that were raised at the consultation meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Tyson, wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I think it was really pleasing that this was one of the first meetings I had as a councillor after being invited by Secretary Margaret Marshall and the rest of the community garden members to go and have a look at what the plans were, how they'd function in practice, what maybe varied from what was written down on the plans to reality, and where things had maybe overgrown a bit, and all the rest of it. And it was really fantastic seeing really a model community consultation meeting, still over Zoom, and one of my first, and getting a great outcome for both parties where everyone's happy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Byrne, wish to close?
Just that for future applications, wouldn't it be great if they all went along this well? So, but just a warning, Councillor Tyson, they don't always go this well, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Item 10.5 is the review of water-sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme and approval of the 2021/22 WSUD scheme rate. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that Council resolves to A, note the full review of the water-sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme since its commencement on the 1st of July 2019 as outlined in Attachment 1, separately circulated, including adjustments to the statutory planning processes to ensure that eligible planning applicants receive a clear information about their option to use the scheme. B, approve maintaining the water-sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme rate at $55, no GST applicable, per square metre of impervious area for 21-22. And C, approve a 50% reduction of the prescribed application fee for the component relating to the amendment of a planning permit to specifically facilitate instances where the owner of a property applies to opt into the water-sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme after the permit has been endorsed.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bettio. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The water-sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme is something that I see as really exciting and something that we're one of the first councils to undertake. But with these, obviously there is a little bit of teething issues, but I feel like we are going along in the right direction. We obviously haven't raised as much money from it as what we would like, but again, as more applicants and more developers get used to how this scheme actually works, there might be more people who jump on board. As you'll note that I added in the point C, which is approving a 50% reduction in the prescribed application fee for the component relating to amending the planning permit. Now, this has come about because what we're finding is that applications, the developer may decide not to contribute to the water sensitive urban design scheme, and they're putting in rain gardens into developments. People are then buying these dwellings and not using their rain gardens. So we're actually getting no benefit to the environment whatsoever. So what this is allowing to do is people can actually post the application, opt in to paying for what the applicant could have to go towards some of our really good environmental projects, such as wetlands at Rose Hill had a really great wetlands upgrade, and so did Woodlands Park, and obviously many other projects. So this is a 50% reduction in the application fee. It's not the 50% reduction in the fee that would go towards the scheme. So I just want to make that really clear. It's just getting rid of one of those little barriers because we don't want a rainwater tank. We don't want these rain gardens, to be sitting there not used. There's no point of that, and so we're trying to find a happy balance. Hopefully this works. This might alleviate some of the issues. So that's the thinking behind that. But I would like to thank a lot of the officers for working towards this, because it is really great that we're one of the first councils to get a water sensitive urban design voluntary contribution scheme up and going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bettio, wish to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Iser?
Just to say that I wasn't actually aware that this existed until it came to us in a report, and so I note in the report that one of the issues has been that knowledge of the scheme. It sounds like it's a really effective way to help both applicants and developers, and also to help improve our water sensitive design, the water sensitive urban design. But perhaps we just need to make sure that it is widely known, widely advertised, widely communicated. So hopefully that point of feedback can be, that's come back through users, can be picked up, and look forward to seeing the next report on how successful how successfully this is tracking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Byrne, you wish to close or put that to the vote? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 10.6 is permanent heritage controls for number 81 Charles Street, Ascot Vale. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Iser.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Iser, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I guess this is a happy ending to one of the efforts that's been taken to, by community largely, to look out for a house that was of heritage quality, and there was I think the application was to demolish all, if not a good portion of it, and community rallied and encouraged council to put forward a interim protection and to have it assessed, and that's proceeded to this point where that permanent heritage controls are now being sought for this particular property. So it's a happy story for those residents who got behind the protection of the heritage home. I note that I think the citation was amended slightly by I think by the owner. I may have that, perhaps if someone wants to correct me on that, perhaps I might have misread that, but that suggests that there's also then been the owner of the property has got on board with this and recognises the heritage quality of the home, which is terrific. So thank you very much to the residents who raised this in the first instance, to the last councillors who then worked with officers to bring this to this point, and we'll hope that this can be resolved in a time-efficient manner. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Councillor Hodgson, wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I would just add my thanks to the residents for this. It's active members of our community who make this a great place to live, and protection of heritage is something that I'm very passionate about, and obviously I'm not alone in Moonee Valley. I don't know whether it's just my few months of experience here, but I'm not sure that many planning scheme amendments go through with 100% support and without having to be referred to an independent panel. But I think that just really goes to show that this is a house that is quite obviously deserving of protection, and it's great to be able to endorse that planning scheme amendment tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Iser, wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Report 10.7 is response to notice of motion report number 2019/25, naming of Canary Island date palms on Mount Alexander Road. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This report is in response to a notice of motion from former Councillor Lawrence in 2019, naming of Canary Island date palms on Mount Alexander Road, Essendon. Council resolved to consider naming the 139 palms after prominent, well-regarded residents of the city of Moonee Valley along the median strip. The recommendation is to not proceed with installing naming plaques for the following reasons. The palms are located on Department of Transport land, and therefore the installation of plaques needs to be approved by them. The Department of Transport have advised council officers that the project would not be supported, citing safety concerns centred on the location of the palms in an area where there are no formal pedestrian crossing points. The safety concerns are around council officers involved in the installation and maintenance of the site, as well as potential visitors to the site. Similarly, council's Parks and Gardens team have identified same concerns around safety risks for visitors who will view the naming plaques and council staff during the plaque installation process and site maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp, wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this was I guess, quite an innovative and great idea from previous Councillor Lawrence a couple of years ago. We were all pretty enthused at having something like this be sort of done, which was something different within our municipality, and obviously the date palms are often taken for granted, but they are a magnificent strip along there, along Mount Road, and being heritage protected and the like, they are certainly it's certainly a significant streetscape. And this idea to name them was, like I said, something innovative and different. I do understand the officers' concerns regarding safety and the Department of Transport's issues with the naming and with obviously the placement of the plaques, just basically being situated right in the median strip of, you know, what is a very busy Mount Alexander Road. So, although I think this, you know, it is a great idea, I can understand the concerns, so happy to support that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Adams, do you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Item 10.8 on the agenda is contract extension under ministerial approval for recycling disposal with MWRRG. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bettio. Councillor Tyson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I think the title of the motion is pretty self-explanatory, except to mention that MWRRG stands for the Metropolitan Waste and Resource Recovery Group. And a lot of the issues around this have been to do with the issues around waste management and recycling across Victoria over the last few years. So this is a pretty common sense, straightforward solution. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Bettio, wish to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Report 10.9 on the agenda is Q3 Council Plan Progress Update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Iser.
Move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Iser, you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, Mayor, look, just quickly, I really enjoy reading the council plan updates because it's a reminder to me each time of the vast or the extensive work that council officers do and the sorts of areas that there's always something that I read that I didn't know council does. And I did actually print it out and have a good look at it, and unfortunately I forgot to bring it with me to highlight some of the work, but it's many and varied. It's often involved and engaging vulnerable groups of community in quite interesting projects that, you know, again, I hope that our community knows of all of that work that is done. So I'd like to thank officers for the endeavours to make sure that what is the progress update, the final progress update, or maybe I don't know if it's quite the final one or the second last one for the current council plan that will end in October or perhaps end at the end of this year. But thank you to the officers for all the work, making sure that these items are ticked off. There are a few things that are still working their way through the processes. I think 86% are on track or completed, a remaining 14% of actions that are off track for various factors, undoubtedly COVID factoring in there in some form. So if people do have time to read through the council plan, I do encourage you to do so because it, as I say, it does give you a good feel for where your rates money is going, and also for people who are involved in the current consultations around the new council plan, it might inspire some thinking around the sorts of things that you would like to see included in our new council plan, or things that you think council doesn't necessarily need to pursue in our next 4 years. So thanks again to officers for working through all of those many actions.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Councillor Hodgson, wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to echo those sentiments from Councillor Iser, I actually attended one of the new council plan workshops. We're currently in phase 2 of our engagement on speaking to the community about what our next 4 years should look like. And we had a presentation, this was the FAIR workshop, we had a presentation from our health impact officer, and the facilitator asked who learnt something about what council delivers in that presentation, and I had to put my hand up because there is just so many things that we offer, and we have an incredibly hard-working workforce, which we're so grateful for. We have a very privileged position in the chamber to be able to come up with some of the ideas, and our community feeds in a lot of those ideas, and our council workers deliver those ideas on the ground. So much valued the work that they do.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Just touching on, as Councillor Iser said, there were two things that were off track. One was continuing the implementation of the parking monitoring and infringement management system, including the Wi-Fi and Smart Park app, which would obviously have been really exciting to be able to look on your app and see where there's available spots, particularly say within Moonee ponds or something like that. You never really know where to get a park. It can be a bit tight sometimes. And complete the redevelopment construction of the East Keilor Leisure Centre. I know that the people on site talk about it in days that were lost due to COVID, but obviously there was a significant, I think it was about 40 days or so, but we're still hoping for the end of September, start of October, pending obviously future COVID issues, but it is seriously exciting, the East Keilor Leisure Centre. So whilst it is slightly off track in terms of timing, it is definitely on track for being an amazing centre. Obviously when you dig deeper into the report, one thing that I was a little bit disappointed to see was that something that was that was not as on track as it should be, was some work relating to the quality of life of older adults, and it had in the comments box that was due to reduction in resources. So obviously I don't want to delve too much into the operational area, but we obviously offer a suite of services for our older adults, but this is obviously a bit of different work, but something that I want to make sure that we are ensuring that just because our older adults don't necessarily have loud voices around social media or whatnot, that things that as a council we are wanting to provide do stay on track in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bettio.
Just to add, Mayor, to all those at home watching, that the next big job that we're tasked with after the budget's been passed is to start working on or finalising the council plan, or the next 4 years of the council plan, just to encourage everyone, if you have ideas, if you'd like to see something, if you'd like to see more from your community, please feel free to contact us. We're more than willing to discuss, to contact your ward councillors. Also, something that I found interesting was that in 16th of February, we were one of the very few councils to be given or receive a carbon neutral certification. So we're one of very few councils across Australia to actually have that certification. So that's fantastic work from our officers and a credit to our team. So congratulations on that, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Iser, would you like to close? You have spoken already. Would you like to close?
I knew there was something more I wanted to say, Mayor. I'm so tired. I do apologise. I just wanted to say that at one of the consultation sessions that I have attended, and again just reiterate that if people are keen to attend those consultation sessions, jump on the Have Your Say website for Moonee Valley, and there are a number that are still continuing over the coming days. At one of those consultation sessions, a question was asked about accountability to how people were throwing up ideas, and the question was, well, how does community keep council accountable for all of these great strategies and actions that are in the council plan? And it's through this mechanism was really just what I wanted to point out, that these reports come to us quarterly, I think, quarterly. And so this is how we make sure that we are meeting those expectations that the community has set in our plan. So to reiterate what Councillor Bettio was saying, we would love to hear about the ideas, and then we look forward to making sure that we're accountable for delivering them.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move to item 11, notices of motion, and we have 2 tonight. Item 11.1 is notice of motion number 2021/19, road safety at the intersection of Buckley, Faulkner and Cooper Streets, Aberfeldy. I'll call on Councillor Sharp to present her notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Notice of motion is, or take notice that at the meeting of Council, it is my intention to move that Council resolves to write to the Department of Transport and the Minister for Transport and Road Safety, the Honourable Ben Carroll, seeking investigation into the intersection of Buckley, Faulkner and Cooper Streets in Aberfeldy, with a current road safety record of 10 accidents involving 28 people and injuring 14 over the past 5 years, for priority action to ensure ongoing trauma is reduced.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bettio. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to speak to your notice of motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the intersection of Buckley, Faulkner and Cooper Streets is it's a peak intersection, particularly at school time. I guess we've got Aberfeldy Primary, OLN, Ave Maria Kindergarten and Ave Maria College all nearby. In the past few months, I've received a number of calls from residents just inquiring about how we could potentially fix the intersection with the large number of crashes there, and there seems to be an issue with the right-hand turn movements, particularly from Faulkner Street, because the road on the Faulkner Street side is actually quite a little bit less wide than, say, Cooper Street, and obviously you've got the 2 lanes in Buckley Street. So it's sort of a mishmash of intersections. So writing to Dot and Minister Carroll, I think, is our first step to seeking ways that we can fix this intersection. Within the last month, maybe 6 weeks ago, there was a very serious accident there involving a bus and a car. The IGA bounties there couldn't open their doors, and I was actually there not long after it happened. So everyone was all in a bit of a state of shock. Because the driver that was involved was quite injured, and she was only quite young, so I was told. So happy to see what we can achieve out of this, and hopefully they look at it sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Bettio, wish to speak to the motion? Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Iser.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like just to move a small amendment to the motion.
Yes. What is your amendment?
Just to add a couple of points. Point B, that reads, to thank the Minister and State Government for the infrastructure funding programs directed towards road safety within Moonee Valley to date and planned. And C, kindly request further investigation and prompt considerations by the Minister and Department of Transport for current and newly identified high priority accident intersections within the City of Moonee Valley that are causing considerable road trauma and ongoing pain for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Adams. Councillor Iser, do you wish to speak to the specific amendment?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Sharp, for bringing up this. I'm familiar with this particular intersection, and it does get quite busy in the morning, and after the lollipop people leave, it looks as though some accidents often occur. So thank you very much for bringing this up. The amendment that I'm putting forward is perhaps just recognising some of the funding that has been recently announced for some of the intersections, unfortunately not this one. So some recognising that state government funding that has been forthcoming, and also then broadening out this to look at some of the other intersections that our current data indicates also warrant close attention, and bringing those high priority intersections to the attention of the Minister.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Councillor Adams, wish to speak to the specific amendment? Does any other councillor wish to speak to the specific amendment? No one's spoken. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. It becomes the substantive, and I have Councillor Sharp having spoken, Councillor Bettio having the opportunity to speak, and Councillor Iser, you were just commencing to speak if you wish to continue.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple more things, and thank you very much for supporting the amendment. If people are interested, there are 8 intersections that have received some road safety funding. Some of those are in Essendon, a couple in Ascot Vale, and one in Moonee Ponds, and they're all reasonably large intersections. One of which, the Maribyrnong Road, Ormond Road. One of the intersections that's not on that list, I should say, is the Maribyrnong. Mayor. Is it on the list? It is where Ormond Road and Maribyrnong Road cross Mount Alexander Road. There have been 15 accidents in the past 5 years as recorded in the data online. I actually, from my notes here, can't quite tell whether it's one of those intersections that's listed or not. Either way, I hope that it's captured in point C as being one of those intersections of high priority. There are a couple of other intersections that also have a very high number of accidents involving pedestrians, which is one of the key features of the intersection that Councillor Sharp's drawn attention to. There are a high number of pedestrians that have been struck at that particular intersection, and there are a couple of others where that's also occurred. One of them is interestingly around Moonee Ponds train station. The data indicated that 5 pedestrians have been hit in that proximity in the 5 years recorded online. And also at the intersection of Racecourse Road, Pinoak and Eastwood, which is actually recorded as being City of Melbourne because it's on the boundary, there have been 5 pedestrians who have been struck. 11 accidents at the intersection of Epsom Road, Ascot Vale Road and Racecourse Road, that roundabout there, which it also is recorded as being in the City of Melbourne because it's on the boundary. And one of the other intersections that caught my attention is outside Flemington Primary School, in the stretch of road between the Wellington and Mount Road intersection to the Kent Street Mount Road intersection. In that area there have been 7 accidents. Fortunately, no one hurt, but some pedestrians affected there too. So we do have some real hotspots in our municipality where pedestrians and cyclists are vulnerable. And again, I thank Councillor Sharp for bringing this to the chamber, and thank officers for pursuing this with the Minister and chasing up on some of these high priority and quite dangerous areas in our city.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this motion. As someone from Rosehill Ward, a lot of people, a significant amount of people go down Buckley Street to get into the city, to get anywhere quite regularly. So I would drive through or take the bus through or walk through this area multiple times a day. But it is an interesting one because I don't actually, and I'm sure the experts will hopefully come up with something, but I don't really know how they're going to be able to improve it, because your vision in that area is actually quite good, as opposed to something like the North Essendon Junction roundabout, where you're dealing with trams and lights and cars going everywhere, which is an absolute schmozzle. This intersection, it should work. And it's quite amazing that it doesn't. Even in the peak periods, they've got a lollipop person on 2 corners to help out. So there's obviously issues, and it's really interesting that they've obviously tried to fix things, and we're still having errors, presumably too many driver errors, which is a real shame because there is lots of kids in this area. So it'll be interesting to see what they come back with, and thank you to Councillor Iser for bringing up that there are a lot of issues down in across the municipality with troublesome intersections. So it'll be interesting to see what we get back. Obviously our local member can look into this and would also be very familiar with the intersections, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Iser, right of reply, amendment mover. Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
I think it's great that, we can be looking at all these intersections, but I just want to highlight that my most of the motion is obviously about my particular intersection, because there's been quite a number of accidents, probably even within the last 6 months, that are now, really concerning people. So certainly happy to look over, across the municipality, but I did put this up to make sure that something could potentially, but as you said, Councillor Byrne, I'm not sure exactly what could be done here either, but as long as they look at it, and maybe it's just a matter of light sequencing or something, I am not sure, but I am certainly hopeful that at least something can be improved somehow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Report 11.2 is Notice of Motion number 2021/20 MVCC Hardship Policy Applications. I call on Councillor Sharp to present her Notice of Motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Take notice that at the meeting of Council it is my intention to move the Council resolves to receive a report on applications of the Moonee Valley City Council's hardship policy during COVID and the number of non-Moonee Valley sporting clubs, non-Moonee Valley community clubs and non-Moonee Valley organisations who have received a benefit by way of reduced fees.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor, a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Tyson. Councillor Sharp, you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, look, it's pretty self-explanatory. When we devised the hardship policy at the start of COVID, March last year, it was we did it all pretty rushed and we tried to cover off every single base that we could to make sure that our residents and organisations were covered by way of a policy. Considering what was happening, that was a moving beast at the time and still is to a degree, but obviously back in March it was all pretty, we didn't know what the following month was going to look like. So I just wanted to see exactly, because when we devised the policy, I pretty much assumed that anyone that would benefit would be Moonee Valley. So just for comfort for myself and I think our ratepayers, I think it would be good to just understand if there are any non-Moonee Valley sporting clubs, community clubs, organisations who have benefited through the hardship policy. Yeah, so it's purely just a way of feeling at ease with how our hardship policy has been enacted, I suppose, and used, and applied, I should say, and applied.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Tyson, wish to speak to the motion?
Just seconding for the purposes of debate, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Iser.
Thanks, Mayor. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to support this motion. COVID's been hard on everybody and all groups and all organisations. I'm very involved in an organisation. Obviously, Flemington is right on the boundary, and we have in our organisation members from City of Melbourne, City of Moreland and Moonee Valley. We often make use of facilities in other municipalities. I think that Moonee Valley is a small geographic area. We're not an island. We live in a large community of Melbourne, a community that's been under great stress and duress, and we share resources across many boundary lines frequently and during times of hardship as well. And if Moonee Valley has been able to offer some relief or some support for community clubs that may or may not have majority or minority members who are part of Moonee Valley, and it's very rare for any club to have members that are only of one particular municipality in our metropolitan Melbourne area, then I actually am glad if our council has been able to offer community organisations, deserving community organisations, some support during a really hard time, and I'm sure that we expect of our neighbouring municipalities some real kinship and mutual support during hard times, and I think it's something that we've been quite good at in Melbourne over the past 12 months in particular, helping each other through some difficult times, and I'd like to think that that spirit of cooperation and mutual support is well entrenched and something that continues.
Thank you, Councillor Iser. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Iser on this one. I'm not really sure what the purpose of this is, and it'll take a lot of time for the officers to prepare this report. And we are part of a wider community, and I just think I like that we have extended our hardship policy to people outside of our municipality, regardless of whether they're, within our Moonee Valley boundaries or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
Just to say, well, like I described at the start, there's nothing untoward with this notice of motion. It was just purely, I think, that we should know how our hardship policy has been applied. And like I said, when we devised it last year, I was of the assumption that, pretty much certainly the majority of our clubs using our facilities are Moonee Valley. So I wouldn't have thought that this would be contentious at all, to be honest with you. Considering the hardship policy is effectively being paid by our ratepayers, I think that our ratepayers would certainly expect to know if our hardship policy has been applied to other organisations that aren't actually within Moonee Valley or Moonee Valley based. I'm not sure. There was talk about other councils doing the same. Well, I don't know if other councils are doing the same. I don't know if any Moonee Valley club that might be based in Moreland has received any benefit from the Moreland Council. I would have no idea on that, and I don't think any of us around the table would. So, like I said, there was nothing untoward in this. If it wants to be taken that there was, clearly it's not. It's purely, I think, we need to be transparent in the way that our hardship policy has been applied, particularly if we do have non-Moonee Valley clubs or organisations that have benefited. They've benefited by way of our ratepayers paying their rates. So I think that's very important, and I'd be very surprised if there was, this was seen to be something other than really what it is. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation. Those against? Councillor Adams, Councillor Bettio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Iser, Councillor Tyson. That motion is lost. Item 12 is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business this evening? There being none, we now move to item 13, which is confidential reports, and we have one confidential report this evening. So, councillors, can I please have a motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to allow for consideration of confidential information under section 3(1)(g), private commercial information, being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that relates to trade secrets due to the disclosure of the prices received from underwriters that is considered commercial in confidence. Moved Councillor Adams, seconded Councillor Bettio. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. This is where we say good night to those of you watching the meeting via live stream. Thanks for your interest in tonight's meeting, and our next ordinary meeting of council will revert back to Tuesday evening, being Tuesday the 13th of July. Good night.